The storm came down without warning, savage and absolute, as if the mountains themselves had decided to swallow everything in their path. One moment the sky had been a dull, threatening gray. The next, it exploded into chaos. Wind tore through the high pines with a howl like a wounded animal, snapping branches and flinging needles through the air. Snow followed in blinding sheets, thick and merciless, erasing trails, landmarks, erasing the world itself. Within minutes, the familiar mountain pass vanished beneath a ghostly white shroud. The cowboy lowered his head against the gale and tightened his grip on the reins. His horse snorted and stamped, muscles trembling beneath its hide as it fought the rising drifts. Snow clung to the animal's mane and eyelashes, frosting them white. Each step forward was a battle, hooves sinking deep before wrenching free again. The cold was unlike anything the cowboy had felt before. It cut through wool and leather as if they were nothing, biting straight into bone. His beard was stiff with ice, his coat heavy with snow. Every breath burned his lungs, sharp and painful. But he did not turn back. He couldn't. Somewhere ahead, lost in this frozen hell, were a woman and her child. He had heard the news hours earlier, before the storm truly broke. An Apache woman and her young daughter, caught high in the mountains, separated from their people. No shelter. No supplies. Just the promise of death if the weather turned. And now it had. Most men would have shaken their heads and stayed put. Most would have said it was too late, that no one could survive a storm like this. But the cowboy had learned something long ago, carved into him by a hard life on the frontier. When someone is in danger, you don't ask who they are. You don't ask where they come from. You go. So he rode straight into the storm. Hours passed, maybe more. Time lost all meaning as the blizzard swallowed everything. The world shrank to a few feet ahead of his horse's nose. Snow stung his eyes and cheeks until his skin felt raw and burning. His fingers were numb inside his gloves, his legs stiff from the cold and endless strain. More than once, the wind shoved him sideways, nearly tearing him from the saddle. Each gust howled louder than the last, as if daring him to give up. He didn't. His body screamed for rest. His thoughts blurred at the edges. But he clung to one thing, the promise that somewhere out there, 2 lives still depended on him. Then, through the white madness, he saw something. At first, he thought it was a trick of the storm. A shadow. A trick of drifting snow. Then it moved. The cowboy sucked in a sharp breath and urged his horse forward, heart hammering. Step by step, the shape sharpened through the swirling snow. A woman. She was slumped against the trunk of a massive pine, its branches sagging under the weight of snow. Her body shook uncontrollably, thin shoulders hunched forward as if she were trying to fold into herself. Long black hair spilled down her back, tangled and frozen, streaked white. In her arms, she clutched a small child. The cowboy swung down from his horse, boots crunching loudly as he waded through knee-deep drifts. The wind clawed at him, but he barely felt it now. His focus was locked on them. He crouched beside the woman and reached out, placing a gloved hand on her shoulder. Her skin was ice-cold. "Ma'am," he said, leaning close so his voice could cut through the storm. "You need to wake up. You're not safe here." No response. His chest tightened. He shook her gently, then more firmly. Her eyes finally fluttered open, dark, glassy, barely aware. Fear flickered there, followed by exhaustion so deep it was almost peaceful. She tried to speak, but only a weak sound escaped her lips. The cowboy's gaze dropped to the child. The little girl couldn't have been more than 5 or 6. Her face was pale as snow, lips tinged blue. Her body shivered violently, teeth chattering even in her mother's arms. When he pressed his fingers gently to her cheek, heat burned beneath the cold. Fever. The cowboy swallowed hard. He carefully lifted the child, cradling her against his chest, tucking her head beneath his chin to shield her from the wind. The girl whimpered softly but didn't wake. The woman stirred weakly, eyes fluttering. "My daughter," she whispered hoarsely. "She's so cold." "I've got her," the cowboy said firmly. "I won't let her die out here. I promise." There was no time to wait. The storm was worsening by the minute. The temperature was dropping fast. He wrapped one arm around the woman and hauled her to her feet. She barely weighed anything, her body limp with exhaustion. Step by step, he dragged her through the snow, heart pounding as he fought to keep his footing. Reaching his horse felt like a lifetime. He settled the woman carefully into the saddle, tying her in with practiced hands so she wouldn't fall. The child remained pressed against his chest, bundled inside his coat as best he could manage. Then he started walking. He couldn't ride, not with the drifts this deep and his horse already struggling. So he led the animal forward, one agonizing step at a time, leaning into the wind with everything he had left. His muscles burned. His breath came in ragged gasps. Every step felt heavier than the last. More than once, darkness crept at the edges of his vision. Still, he moved. Then, through the storm, he saw it. A shape. Straight lines where there should have been none. A cabin. Hope slammed into him so hard it nearly knocked him to his knees. He forced his legs to move faster, heart pounding. The horse whinnied softly, sensing safety just ahead. At last, he reached the door. It took everything he had to force it open. Warmth spilled out, washing over him like a blessing. He staggered inside, dragging the woman and carrying the child, and kicked the door shut behind him. The storm howled outside, but it was shut out now. He laid the woman and child near the hearth, feeding the fire until flames leapt high and strong. He wrapped them in every blanket he could find, rubbing their hands and feet to coax life back into frozen flesh. The woman's breathing was shallow but steady. The child's shivering slowly eased as the heat soaked in. The cowboy collapsed to one knee, body shaking from exhaustion and relief. Hours passed. He stayed awake through all of them. He fed the fire. He warmed water. He checked their breathing again and again. When the woman finally stirred, whispering her daughter's name, he leaned close and answered softly. "She's safe," he told her. "You both are." By morning, the storm had broken. Sunlight filtered weakly through frost-covered windows. The child's fever had eased. The woman slept peacefully, color slowly returning to her cheeks. The cowboy sat nearby, eyes heavy, body aching, but alive. He had ridden into death and come back with hope. And the mountains, silent now, bore witness.